Spell Show as Steve Risley's a moron showing you his Colts shirt after they get their ass kicked. I am your host, Mike Goodpaster, and remember, we are brought to you by Manscaped. Go to manscaped.com, promo code TGT20 for 20% off your first purchase and free shipping. My co-host, Pittsburgh Steeler fan extraordinaire. You know, his last month was kind of rough, but now he's happy. Help me welcome to the show, Samuel L. Teets. It's like Samuel L. Jackson, so go ahead.
No. It was a great day yesterday, Mike. It was probably the best outcome possible for Pittsburgh overall.
All right, shut up, Sam. And next up, we have our Colts fan who, even though he wears Chargers stuff all the time, is a Colts fan, I guess. Help us welcome to the show a man who went to high school with Phillip Rivers, 1981 national champion, Steve Risley. How you doing, Steve?
It was a fun day of football yesterday. It was it engaged you all day with all the games going on. Once, an example would be my Colts, once they lost, you started watching the scenarios to see how things were going to turn out. Kudos to Miami. I thought that they pulled some stuff out. We got a lot to talk about. I thought it was a great week in the NFL for what they've been through all year long. So good for them.
All right.
And I got to say, of the three of us, I believe I'm the only one who picked the Bengals to win.
Well, good.
Mike, your team, you didn't even pick your own team.
No, because I'm smart enough not to. But I didn't know the Houston Texans were just going to lay down on defense and make Deshaun Watson play a 1-on-11 the entire game. But let's start off with last night, Lambeau Field in the snow. The Green Bay Packers 40-14 over the Tennessee Titans. And I think this surprised all of us, not necessarily that Green Bay won, because I think at least Steve picked Green Bay. I think Steve probably won this week, but I don't know officially. But the Green Bay Packers 40-14 over Tennessee, and this was no winter wonderland for the Tennessee Titans and Ryan Tannehill. It was a cold, hard night in which visions of clinching the AFC South kind of swirled away in a winter storm. The Green Bay Packers win 40-14. Sam, are they better than what we thought they were?
I think they are, because the best counter they have to teams that can run the ball really well like Tennessee is just put up a lot of points very early and make the Titans throw the ball, make them play from behind. And that's what happened last night. Green Bay jumps that 6-0 lead after the first quarter. They pour on 13 in the second quarter, 14 in the third. And by the end of the game, Tennessee can't run the ball anymore. They have to throw. And the Packers, their strength of their team, I'd say, would be their secondary with guys like Darnell Savage, Adrian Amos, and Jair Alexander. You have those guys back in the defensive backfield. You force teams to throw into that unit when they're playing from behind, and suddenly Green Bay's defense looks a lot better because you don't have to expose that weak interior defense.
Now, here's my question to Steve Risley. We had this debate a couple weeks ago. Me and Sam were on one side. You were on the other. Of course, Bobby Sheridan, who listens in, was on Steve's side. And I don't think there's any doubt after last night. You correct me if I'm wrong, because you did disagree 2 weeks ago. Aaron Rodgers is the MVP. He was 21-25, 4 touchdowns, 231 yards. They're 12-3 now. Patrick Mahomes had a bad game yesterday. Aaron Rodgers is the MVP, isn't he, Steve?
Hang on here. I'm writing some notes real quick to make sure I get these out in our debate. No, I think that Breeze muddied the water big time.
How would Breeze muddy the water?
Drew?
How would Drew Brees muddy the water on MVP?
Well, I think the way he's come back and played and how New Orleans has looked. New Orleans, again, looks like the best team in the NFL. Here's what I think. I think that if we played the game in the frozen tundra for all 32 teams in the NFL and did it weekly, it's a walk away for Aaron Rodgers. I think had this game been played in Tennessee or in a dome, I'm not sure the outcome of this game would have been the same.
Wait a second.
I agree. Let me finish.
This is ignorant, Steve. Come on.
Let me finish.
Against the Saints.
Well, 2 weeks ago, when I talked about this game coming up and everything, I said that I thought that Aaron Rodgers is the best cold weather quarterback in the NFL.
Over Tom Brady?
Tom, it would be a duel between those two. And in terms of right now at this point in their career, being able to rally a team to get an important win, I would probably go with Rodgers over Brady right now. 10 years ago, No contest.
10 years ago, Aaron Rodgers won a Super Bowl.
And so did Brady.
Yeah,
But
and so did Brady 2 years ago.
On this given Sunday, had Brady gone up and had to take his team and play in Tampa Bay against the Packers, I think you'd have seen close to the same results.
40 to 14.
I still think Aaron Rodgers probably is deserving of the MVP because he has less to work with than does. But I think that Breeze has muddied the waters again and said,
Breeze? How can Breeze even be considered? Nobody considers Breeze an MVP candidate.
okay, well, I do.
Why?
Well, because I think he's revitalizing the Saints to the point to where this isn't a conversation about Breeze. It's a conversation about
You brought up Breeze.
okay. As an example of somebody else. What I think yes. I think Brady is or Brady. See, you got me 10 times twisted now. Rodgers is the odds-on favorite for the MVP. He should be, but it's closer now than it was.
All right. So before 2 weeks ago, you said Patrick Mahomes should be.
Yeah. But I like the dumb AP and coaches polls in the college football poll. Notre Dame loses to Clemson or Clemson loses to Notre Dame. One team falls from second or third to 14.
Well, who's the best team in the NFL right now if we don't go by Sam's goofy power rankings?
Who's the best team in the NFL right now?
Yeah.
I don't think it matters. I think it matters is who's the most dangerous team in the NFL.
Wouldn't that be the best team?
No, not necessarily.
Really?
No.
Well, who's the best team?
I'm going to tell you what, right now, I wouldn't want to play Buffalo if I had to face anybody in the AFC.
Well, I will tell you what. 8 weeks ago, when they had a 3-game
none of you have Buffalo as the number one team in the power rankings. You have them in the top 5.
You're full of shit, Risley, because I said the Buffalo Bills would win the Super Bowl 8 or 9
But
weeks
in the power rankings, they're not one.
I don't do power rankings, Steve. That's
right,
Sam.
because they're stupid.
No, because Sam writes them. And the only thing that's stupid is putting Drew Brees in the MVP conversation, which nobody does. Because Drew Brees, I hate to tell you this, Drew Brees threw how many touchdown passes on Saturday?
All right, get off of Drew Brees. This conversation.
You brought up Drew Brees.
I retract my statement of Drew Brees.
Don't retract it. Tell me this.
I retract it, Judge.
Sam,
I retract the statement.
What were Drew Brees' stats on Saturday to muddy the waters on the MVP candidacy?
0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions.
Yeah, and what did this team do?
Alvin Kamara scored 6 touchdowns to bail his ass out.
And what did this team do? And he scored 6 touchdowns not largely, but in part also because they started respecting Drew Brees' arm again. And that opened up pathways in ground game.
They did not. They had 8 or 9 guys in the box the whole game to stop the run, and Alvin Kamara still ran on.
I retract my statement about Drew Brees.
You can't retract your statement because you made it. I mean, it was a stupid statement. Just admit it. It was a dumber statement than Sam Teets writing power rankings every week.
Okay, I take that. I'm going to take all your abuse. I would say at this point in time, based on what my version of an MVP is, which is somebody who has put the weight of his team on his shoulders and carried that team and been the point to where if Aaron Rodgers went down, what would it mean versus if Mahomes went down or if Breeze went down or if Brady went down? Okay, and I look at it and I say probably the two teams at that point I would consider Brady and Rodgers. Because I think if the Buccaneers or the Packers lost either one of those 2 quarterbacks, those teams would change dramatically overnight.
Well, I think this, Sam. I think Tom Brady's in the top 3 in the MVP conversation now.
What did I just say, Mike?
I'm not talking to you, Steve. Sam.
I think it would have to be just looking ahead to what my quarterback power ranks will be tomorrow. I think it would probably be Rodgers number 1 easily, maybe Josh Allen 2 and Brady 3. Because I know Mahomes is a very good quarterback, but I think Mahomes has had 2 or 3 bad games in the past 4 weeks at this point. So we're looking at who's the hottest right now. I mean, Brady, in a half of football, Tom Brady had 4 touchdown passes.
Well, I think a lot of that is what happens tonight against New England, too, with Josh Allen.
Right.
Yeah, that would impact it as well.
And again, in terms of Aaron Rodgers, and I'd be perfectly fine to give Aaron Rodgers the Chevy pick-him-up truck and the MVP and all that goes with it. Okay, but look at a quarterback here who went into moderately calm weather conditions and lost to the Colts. Okay, and just pretty well got dumped on by the Colts.
Who are we talking about?
Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is hands down the best cold weather quarterback playing the game today.
Tom Brady.
Overall, Tom Brady is, but to say that Brady could do it like he used to do it now, we'd have to go see. I mean, and I agree with Sam. Brady was definitely elevating himself now into the top three. He took a team that hadn't been in the playoffs since 2007, got him there, got that team there, brought that team together, and I think that Tampa Bay's another team that's a little less dangerous
real
than
quick,
Buffalo.
let me bring something up to you. Because Aaron Rodgers went to Indianapolis. He was 27 for 38 for 311 yards and 3 touchdowns. I don't think Aaron Rodgers was the reason they lost that game.
Hey, it's always on the quarterback shows, win and lose.
Well, to you, maybe. But the people that know something about football, it's not. Because you just said yourself, Deshaun Watson is one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the NFL. But Sam's not going to rank him there because his team's not as good. Now, right. Sam will rank him higher than what somebody with those stats would normally have because of that. But when you look at this, I think my MVPs right now would be Rodgers number 1, Allen number 2, Brady 3, Mahomes 4.
I can live with that. I have no problem living with that. I have no problem living with that ranking whatsoever right now.
Yeah, because I think with Tom Brady's hell, if they'd have let Tom Brady play that whole game against Detroit, which we'll get to in a minute, he may have thrown for 1,000 yards in the game and be leading the league in passing right now.
Now, I did Green Bay secure home field playoffs for
not yet.
Not yet. Okay, not yet.
They beat the Bears.
I think that's huge. I think that's a huge thing for Green Bay. If they can go out and play at Lambeau Field as much as they can, they're just used to that environment, and I do think that makes a difference in the game. I saw a Tennessee team that got tentative. Tannehill is, born and raised in Miami and went through his preteen pubescent years in Nashville. Both very nice climates to grow up in. And granted, he's played some cold weather games. Yes.
Aaron Rodgers grew up in California, right?
Yeah, but he's not in his NFL career.
But in college, he was in California too.
And you know what? I'm sitting outside my house and I see snow-peaked mountains.
You're not sitting outside your house because we can see the wall behind you, which means
when I go outside to vacuum the pool.
Don't you have a pool boy?
Yeah, but he didn't come on Christmas Eve.
Okay, that's kind of racist to have a pool boy. Next up, I'm just kidding, Steve.
We have a pool person.
Next up, we have the Seattle Seahawks 20-9 over the LA Rams. Jared Goff is going to keep this team from being able to do anything come playoff time, if they even make the playoffs now, Sam.
Yeah, they're not a lock to make it now, surprisingly, because they've been hot and they were in the lead of that division, I think 2 weeks ago at this point. Then they lose to the Jets. They go out, they lose to Seattle. Jared Goff's had back-to-back bad games. And, the Rams at this point, I don't know if they deserve to make the playoffs. I mean, we were talking about at one point the NFC West potentially being the most competitive division in football, but I don't know if I trust any team coming out of the division right now. Arizona blew a game they probably should have won for San Francisco. Now you get the Rams losing to Seattle. The Seahawks are good with Russell Wilson, but they're not a complete team. And there's just so many issues in this whole division that I don't think the NFC West is very good this year, really.
I think Seattle is. I think Seattle's gotten better. I think they've run the ball better the last couple of weeks. And the defense was much maligned, but the past month they've played much better. And Sunday they kind of smothered the Rams, and it's the 5th straight game Carroll's defense has allowed fewer than 20 points. And if they keep allowing less than 20 points, Russell Wilson's going to beat you. I think what we saw here is this. The Rams are not a threat to make a Super Bowl run, but I think the Seahawks are, Steve.
I don't think either team is. I agree with Sam in this one. I think that that whole conference is a train wreck now. I personally think San Francisco may be playing the best football of any team in that conference right now.
Really?
Well, I mean, maybe the most fun. And I get more of those games out here than you guys do. So I see those teams play a lot more. And I tell you, San Francisco is fun. I'd love to see that team play healthy. and see what they could do. I think they'd be in the mix big time.
Really?
If they did.
If they were healthy, yeah, but they're not healthy. They're
No,
not
I know.
good.
If, right, exactly.
They lost to the
Right.
Dallas Cowboys and gave up 41 points to the Cowboys last week, so I don't think they're playing the best football in the division. It's Seattle.
They're not healthy. They're not healthy.
So? Nobody.
San Francisco's a team I would not – if I'm the Rams, I would probably rather play Seattle again than go play San Francisco.
Sam?
Mike, if we just all agree on everything,
what kind of about agreeing on anything? I mean, this is the fact that you're saying the 49ers
out here in LA, they're calling for Goss head.
Well, they should have been calling
for Goss
head. And they are. I watched local sports, all the local sports in Los Angeles. Actually, LeBron, I don't think he even got mentioned last night. This was all about Goff. I think that Goff basically is going to finish out this season with him. And then I think he's trade bait, and the Rams will look to make some changes. I think that the relationship between McVay and Goff is souring better than a rotten egg left on a 100-degree sidewalk, faster than one. I mean, you can look at McVay's face. He has absolutely no confidence in Goff to get the job done. This is 2 weeks in a row. Your team that's looking to control their own destiny to the playoffs, to where now they've got to win to make the playoffs.
All right. I will bring this up. Even though the Seahawks aren't a contender for the Super Bowl, says Steve, they can still be the number 1 seed by the time next week's done if the Bears beat the Packers and the Seahawks win.
Really? Now, that'd be interesting if they ended up number 1 overall.
Well, I think
that would be a joke.
What would be a joke? A team that is 12-4 to be the number 1 seed?
Mm-hmm. They're okay.
What? I didn't make that up. It's true.
All right. Well, then you got to start going to the strength of schedule and see who they played to get to 12-4.
Really?
And I don't know that. I don't know that. Let our statisticians, our crack interns and statisticians do all that work. Probably the same ones that make up the bonehead power rankings for Sammy.
Really? So now you're going to make fun of Sam again.
Like you never do.
No, I don't. Well,
okay. Should we talk about how the show ended last week?
I don't even remember how the show ended.
Yeah, Sam remembers, don't you, Sam? I'm not going to bring it up.
I did really.
Oh, yeah. I wasn't insulted by that, by the way. I was just hungry. I just wanted to go. Wanted to go eat food.
I think it had something to do with the ethnicity of the food he was eating, and we turned that into his ethnicity.
Okay. Well, so the Seahawks beat the Rams. The Seahawks.
Okay, everybody's beating the Rams right now.
Well, this is the thing that's interesting to me. The Seahawks blew out the 49ers. The Seahawks lost a 10-point game to the Bills. Seahawks beat the Cardinals, who are a possible playoff team.
Mike, you're like CNN News. You edit everything people say and use them to your favor.
No, you just said you were looking at straight.
If the 49ers were a healthy football team, they would be dangerous.
Comment. Everybody knows
they're not healthy.
You said that they were better right now, though. You said that if you were the Rams, you would rather play the 49ers.
I said they were more fun to watch.
You said that you would rather
move on. Okay. Move on.
Move on means you were wrong. Next up, the Pittsburgh Steelers beat the Indianapolis Colts, who crapped all over themselves after dominating the first half. Steve, Frank Reich is a moron. Why would you not?
Frank Reich doesn't call the plays. Frank Reich doesn't call the plays.
Bullshit.
He doesn't.
He doesn't wear a headset?
He wears a headset, but he leaves.
Did he hire the offensive coordinator? No, he doesn't. Nobody does. It's a good head coach. I've got an offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator. I hear everything is called. If I think it's stupid, we change it. And the other thing is at halftime, when you make adjustments, you just tell them we don't make adjustments. We keep running Jonathan Taylor. I don't know how this is not the head coach's fault if the play calling's bad.
And how many plays did you change in your game when you had your headset on?
It's according to what year and how smart my offensive coordinator is.
This last season.
This season, probably 10.
Okay.
But I can tell you this. When the game plan is designed, it's designed with me and the offensive coordinator, so he knows what I want.
It's designed with everybody.
So I'm sure that then that would be Frank Reich's fault.
You know, the thing about it, Mike, having only played 2 months of college sports, there's a thing there that relies on the player's shoulders. It's called execution. All right, the players have to execute.
Well, you know what, Steve?
Everybody can draw up good and bad game plans
Yeah.
and play calling and things like that.
Then
But
why
if
does
the players
Bill
don't,
Belichick work?
and I'm going to tell you
Why
yesterday,
does Bill Belichick's work?
why does Bill Belichick's work?
It's worked for like 20
His
years.
players executed
Why?
because it was a
Why?
good.
Hey, why did Indiana execute?
Okay, I thought we were talking about.
Why
I'm
did
going back
Indiana
to Pittsburgh.
execute? No, you brought it up. And
Belichick's
once
out of the
again,
playoffs, son.
like always, your
Give
ass
the
will
program.
run when you're wrong, and it's what you're doing now.
What? It's an irrelevant question. Belichick's
No,
not in
you
the
asked
playoffs.
the question. You asked the question. You said that. You sat right there and you said, well, the players got to execute. Whose responsibility is it to get the players to execute?
The players.
Okay. The players. Really?
Right. And I'm trying to get to my point is
So-
that Rivers did not execute in the second half.
Rivers can't execute when the play calling is that bad and he's
I
on
didn't
a
think
shot.
the offensive line was – I thought the offensive line held its ground.
Nobody said a
thought
word
they
about the
created holes.
offensive line.
Taylor runs for 90 yards against the Steelers defense.
All I know is this. Taylor ran for 90 yards in what, the first half?
Most everything happened in the first half of the Colts, yeah.
So if you're up 24-7 and you got a big lead and you want to shorten the game and you want to run the ball, why the hell would you throw the ball?
Well, I know, and you know, I know the one conversation we always had in the locker room was don't deviate from what we're doing that got us to where we are right now. Keep going. If you start changing things, then you're creating a whole new scenario, a whole new environment, and that's uncharted territory for us. We know what's working. Let's keep executing with what we're doing, and let's get up so far. The Colts are up, what, 24-7 with 20 minutes to go in the game. They lost that game in the last 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. They just stopped executing.
They stopped executing. Well,
Passes were missed. Passes were dropped.
Hey, all I can tell you is this. They stopped doing what they did in the first half.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which invalidates everything you just said because you just said that they continued to do what they did.
If they would have continued to do what they did.
So at halftime, when they didn't continue to do what they did, though, that's not on the head coach.
The Colts didn't get up 24-7 by throwing 6 deep bombs.
Exactly. They got it by running the ball.
They got it by running the ball and dumping off short passes and letting their receivers and their tight ends do the work. That's not a game plan that I would deviate from at halftime if I'm up 24-7. I would say, hey, let's pull it back in because they're going to go into a prevent defense or they're going to go deep on us. Don't give them that pass. Let's don't make that pass. Let's just stay in. Let's keep dumping the ball. Let's keep using our running game, chewing up clock, and things like that. That would seem to be the game plan that the Colts wanted to try and execute. However, they stopped executing the game plan.
But that's not
on the field. It's a combination of everything. The Colts, as a team and organization, in the last 30 minutes of that football game, basically puked on themselves. And I can't take anything away from Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh got their heads out of their asses and came out the second half and played good football. They played typical Roethlisberger, Pittsburgh Steelers football. They ground the Colts into the ground.
That's because the Colts decided to deviate from what they were doing. We saw the week before, and we saw with Washington also, Sam, those were teams that just loaded the box, kept pounding the hell out of them, and never backed off. It looked to me like the Colts on defense even changed what they were doing and tried to play it safe. They played a lot more cover 2 and cover 3 instead of actually loading the box and going after Big Ben. So to me, they allowed Pittsburgh, and it's not a shot on Pittsburgh because Pittsburgh took advantage of it. It's just kind of like a boxer, knocked a guy down, 3 times in the first round, and then you let him recover. And once you let him recover, you're screwed. And that's what they did. They let up. And when they let up, Pittsburgh took advantage of it. And I'll tell you this, that is a huge shout out to Mike Tomlin and Ben Roethlisberger because everything they've been through, it would have been real easy to just say, here we go again. This is what's been going on, and just allowed it to happen again. So I think the Colts, this is completely on Frank Reich. He's the head coach. They were up 24-7. They did not continue to do what got them to where they were at, Sam.
No, and you mentioned defensively changing what they were doing. They didn't touch Ben Roethlisberger in the second half. They didn't even lay a finger on him. He had a clean pocket throw. The offensive line played much better. There was no pass rush from a team that has DeForest Buckner as defensive tackle. I don't know how that happens. They had no pass rush. that had all the time he wanted. And he had 3, 4, 5 completions of 20-plus yards downfield. I know the touchdown to Deontay Johnson and the one to Juju were both over 20 yards downfield. We hadn't seen that in 4 weeks at this point. So the fact that he was able to go out and do that, it was almost like just flicking a switch almost. It was really quick. Like, it wasn't like a slow turnaround throughout the game. It was just one drive. Suddenly he was there. And then it was there for every drive until the end of the game. So hopefully that continues into next week. Because if it does, I mean, it'll be a very quick turnaround, but that would really help them out against Cleveland.
Yeah, and at least for the Colts, they get to play the Jaguars, so they should win that. But they need one of 3 teams to lose, which will probably happen. It's the NFL. It's kind of like trying to hit a 3-team NFL parlay. It doesn't happen very often because the games are so weird. So I think there's a decent shot the Colts still make the playoffs, Steve, because let's face it, the Browns are the Browns, and they're probably going to puke on themselves against the Steelers. Even though Pittsburgh's not playing for anything, Mason Rudolph will probably win them the game. But this Colts team, I think, has significant issues.
I think that's why a lot of these games are getting moved to 4 o'clock. There's 4 good football games involving all 4 of these teams. Miami's got to go to Buffalo. All right. Oh, man, I don't know about that. I mean, the question becomes, does Buffalo have anything to play for? Or do they rest their players?
They're going to rest them, I would think.
Yeah. And that obviously favors Miami. But again, you're going back into probably a very cold weather situation for a bunch of warm weather places. And maybe that's just me that believes that has an effect, but I don't like cold weather. I don't like doing crap in cold weather. That's a big chunk of the reason we moved out here west. So we don't face it. It got down to 43 last night, and we had fires going. We had, blankets, top of blankets, covered by an electric blanket. 43 to us is sub-zero to you guys in the Midwest. So I understand that. So anyway, Miami's got to go to Buffalo. That's less than a toss-up. Tennessee's got to go to Houston. Should be a cakewalk game for Houston, but I'm going to tell you what, when you got Deshaun Watson on the field, shit can happen. That guy's that good of a quarterback. He can single-handedly take over a football game if he decides he wants to walk away from this season with a win. He can do it.
Well, he did against Cincinnati. The problem was the rest of the team is.
Yeah, no, but he is one of those rare breed quarterbacks who can do it on his own.
And he almost beat the Colts twice.
I'm not going to be positive. Houston probably won't play Deshaun Watson next week.
Really?
You saw at the end of the game against Cincinnati, he got his hand caught up in the face mask.
That's right. I heard about that.
After that, it's a minor injury, so he might be able to play. But if I'm Houston, I'm not playing Deshaun Watson in Week 17 when I have nothing to play for. There's no reason to play Deshaun Watson, put him in harm's way. You're on that terrible offensive line one more time. You're tempting fate that way.
Why do it, exactly?
So I wouldn't count Deshaun Watson playing next week.
And then you look at the Colts and the Jaguars. The Jaguars to win that game about the dumbest thing they could do. Because I don't know if that throws them back in the mix.
They've already clinched. They've already clinched the number 1 pick. And also,
the Jaguars want to go ahead and try and win the game.
We have breaking news in the NFL. Dwayne Haskins has been released by the Washington Redskins.
Released?
Yep,
yeah,
he's gone.
Wow. That's going to the penthouse to the outhouse in 60 minutes.
Yeah.
Yee, released.
All right. If we want to
the good news there is he'll probably be the Colts starting quarterback next year.
I don't think he'll be the starting quarterback anywhere except maybe for the Rocks XFL when it starts up. All right. The Jets make it 2 in a row with a win over the Cleveland Browns. The Browns are still the Browns. I think it would have been perfect if the Steelers would have lost and the Browns would have lost the chance to win the division by losing to the 1-win Jets.
Well, okay. Well, that's what happened to the Colts. Colts right now could have been sitting on number 1 in the AFC South and controlling their own destiny. So that exact same scenario played out for the Colts yesterday.
Well, yeah, but
they got beat. Had the Colts won, finished that game out, and they had control of that game. Had they won, they would be now facing a weaker opponent, going in as a home, playing it at home. And I know right now playing at home doesn't mean what it used to mean, but it still means you're sleeping in your own bed, you're driving your own car, you're in your own environment, you're eating your own restaurant food or home-cooked food wherever you are. It makes enough of a difference. So the Colts went through that scenario yesterday. Now they're fighting for the playoffs, as are a lot of teams now, and that was critical. And Cleveland just puked on themselves the exact same way.
How about this, Sam? Let me ask you this: the Browns were missing what, 4 wide receivers, all that would have played. Why
Hot
wasn't
tubbing.
Why wasn't the game put off till Tuesday? That's what they do for teams like Kansas City and Pittsburgh, right?
Hey, they didn't move for Pittsburgh. They moved it for Baltimore, if you recall. It wasn't Pittsburgh whatsoever.
Well, they
Pittsburgh
moved
got their bye week.
the Pittsburgh Tennessee game. Was that for Pittsburgh or Tennessee though?
That was for Tennessee. That was for Tennessee.
But they would have moved it for Pittsburgh.
But they haven't had to.
But they would. But
Well,
why would they not move the game a couple of days back to get these players cleared so they could play in a game of this importance?
I don't know, because apparently I guess they felt it was contained just those 4 guys, and they thought they didn't have to worry about anything else.
Well, and the Cleveland Browns don't get really good TV ratings.
Not too. Especially when you're playing the New York Jets, and I'll hope we're getting the first throw picks out
I'll
the window.
throw in my 2 cents worth since you asked, Mike, so thank you for asking for my 2 cents worth.
Well, I can only ask one of you at a time. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. All right. I think this also entails, and I'm being somewhat facetious about this, Pittsburgh's a beloved franchise in the NFL. How many? What do they got? 6 Super Bowls?
Yeah, anything that helps Pittsburgh, because Pittsburgh is
right.
Really
yeah, I
team.
think there's something into that, and I don't want to take anything away from what Pittsburgh's done this year or yesterday. Pittsburgh won that football game yesterday. Well, they gutted it out, but I do think behind closed doors in a private meeting, it's like, we want we want Pittsburgh. We want Roethlisberger there. What a great story. 38 years old, still slinging it. And here's the Iron Curtain back again. And, boy,
it's the
I wouldn't want to play Pittsburgh right now. They're a game-by-game great team.
The Iron Curtain was Khrushchev in Russia. The Steel Curtain was Chuck Noll and the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, iron, steel.
Yeah, same damn thing.
You say tomato, I say tomato.
All right. Next up, the Kansas City Chiefs barely escaped the Atlanta Falcons. Now, I don't know what's more concerning here, Sam, the offense or the defense. They only scored 17 points against the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah. No, that's pretty bad. And I think if you watch Patrick Mahomes had a play during that drive where they go down, they score, and they go ahead 17-14. There was a play where they threw the ball up. A.J. Terrell, the rookie corner for Atlanta, gets his both hands on the ball, comes down with it, but his elbow hits the ground and it pops the ball out. It would have been an interception in the end zone, and Atlanta would have won the football game. So you missed that interception. And then Younghoe Koo, the Pro Bowl kicker for Atlanta, misses a field goal at the very end of the game that would have forced overtime. So Atlanta should have won this game. The Chiefs got lucky this time. I know the Chiefs have won a bunch of one-score games this year, but this was a time where they really should have lost this game.
Yeah, but you know what that happens? It happens because one team's not very good and the other team's really good. And it seems like the teams that are really good figure out ways to win games like this, and teams that are bad drop the interception that would have won the game. It's the way it is. Steve, any concern with the Chiefs?
No, none whatsoever. I think I think what the Chiefs did yesterday was show how you can win a game by resting your players without pulling them out of the game. I don't think they put any of their key players in fraught-like position. They play conservative football for the most part, and they made sure they did enough to win the game. But I think that's probably all that Kansas City had in mind. And I thought that Atlanta elevated their play to a fair degree, and it ended up being a good game to watch scoring-wise, but I still think if needed to, Kansas City would have turned up the juice, and that game could have gotten out of hand real quick.
I don't think so. I think the reason for concern is this. Patrick Mahomes threw the ball 44 times yesterday, only completed 24. They had absolutely no running game. Le'Veon Bell, 7 for 30. Darrell Williams, 10 for 46. I think that's the issue with this team right now with a high ankle sprain with, Hilaire out. Without Hilaire, I don't think they can get to the Super Bowl, Sam.
I think they were very one-dimensional without Hilaire. I know that Williams had a little success early in the year, maybe before Hilaire took over full-time. Bell hasn't had success since 2017 at this point, maybe 2018. I think that was the year I actually sat out. So they haven't had any successful running back situations recently. If you're a one-dimensional offense, you have a chance to go far. We've seen the Chiefs do a little bit of that recently, but I think you really need to have that running game. If you're not getting Hilaire back, and we talked about high ankle sprains on the show before with Jimmy Garoppolo, if this is like a 6 or 7 week situation here where he's going to miss the playoffs, then you're really in a tough spot, especially against a team like Buffalo that can run the ball. They've had games where Buffalo's run for close to 200 yards. If that happens against Kansas City's defense, the Chiefs aren't going to beat the Bills.
Okay, Sam, let me ask you a question. How much can you call the Chiefs one-dimensional when Mahomes is back there? Mahomes is as good a running threat as any quarterback in the NFL.
No, he's not.
No, I would say here's the thing. If you're talking about quarterbacks who are running threats, I say the top group of quarterbacks that can run the ball, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, guys like Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen are up there. Mahomes is in the second spot. Mahomes is not going to run for 80 yards a game. All those guys in the top four, they can do that. Mahomes is a guy who's going to probably run for 35, 40 yards. That's not enough to count, to make up for the loss of a starting running back in Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Okay.
Yeah, Mahomes this year has had one game where he's ran for more than 50 yards. He's actually had 3 games where he's ran for nothing. And, I mean, there's not a whole lot of rushing here. He averages 30 yards a game.
To defend myself, I would just say running the ball, being a more of a threat, is least likely to be sacked. I mean, he's going to get himself out of trouble behind the line of scrimmage and at least gain some positive yards on it and keep moving the chains, which is what great quarterbacks do. They move the chains and keep the chains moving downfield till they get into position to score in the red zone or get a field goal and score points. So I don't know there's anybody more dangerous. I think we all would agree right now there's probably nobody more dangerous than Mahomes.
Josh Allen.
In the NFL. Josh Allen more than Mahomes?
Yeah. Mahomes has been sacked 24 times, and he averages 31 yards a game rushing.
Mm-hmm.
So when we look at Josh Allen's stats, let me pull it up real quick.
Josh Allen's been sacked 25 times this year, and he's run for 383 yards and 8 touchdowns.
Yeah, so he's got 300 more yards. He's ran for 8 more touchdowns than Patrick Mahomes has, and he's been sacked 2 times more.
Most likely because he's had to.
Because he's had to what?
Rush more and run more.
No,
Mahomes has.
That's why would he have to?
I don't know that his offensive line or his receiving corps is as good as what Pittsburgh's got. I would not be. I had no concerns about Kansas City's win over Atlanta yesterday. It was a meaningless game.
You said the Bills were probably going to beat them earlier in the show.
Yeah.
So then there has to be a concern.
No. Why does there have to be a concern?
Well, because they are defending Super Bowl.
Because the Bills are infinitely better than Atlanta as a football team. You can't compare apples to oranges.
So the fact that you beat Atlanta, an infinitely inferior team to Buffalo, 17-14 at home, causes no concern.
Mike, I'm just saying from my perspective, that's just one of those games where I never felt that the Chiefs were in jeopardy of losing that game.
Okay. Well, if that one Korean dude could have kicked that field goal, it would have been tied and they'd have been going to overtime. Then
I go back to my old cliche, if is the middle word in life. He didn't.
Okay. Next up, the Bears offense is on fire. Mitchell Trubisky game was tight at halftime. The Bears pulled away. The Jags get Trevor Lawrence. Did he get Urban Meyer too, Steve?
No. Urban Meyer's in the booth at some college football place calling football games.
Sam?
You know, if you're the Jaguars, why would you do this to Trevor Lawrence? Why would you, when you had just the opportunity to reset your entire program, your entire organization, why would you hire Urban Meyer? Because you know it's not going to work. These college coaches barely ever work at the NFL level. You'll be out of the NFL in 2 or 3 years if you hire Urban Meyer, and you'll have to reset all over again.
I'm just saying they're stupid enough to do it. Their owner is stupid enough to pay him a lot of money too.
Mike, who's the best available offensive coordinator or quarterbacks coach? I'd be more concerned about that than I would a head coach right now.
I don't think you really need. I mean, Trevor Lawrence has got a quarterbacks coach that's better than anybody they're going to hire, anyways. I mean, all these guys do. I mean, most of these teams don't have a qualified quarterback coach on staff. Most of the qualified quarterback coaches are coaching privately.
Sam, I am terribly sorry. What is Clemson's name? Bubba, or what's Clemson's football coach's name?
Oh, Dabo Sweeney.
Dabo, yeah. I only know that because he's Clemson is Chase Elliott's favorite college football team. What about Dabo? Will he follow Lawrence and go to the NFL?
No, Dabo would fail miserably in the NFL. Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, Dabo has a lower chance of succeeding in the NFL than someone like Nick Saban does, and both Nick Saban's failed in the NFL once already. And Dabo would have a lower chance of succeeding than.
I would give you this, though. I believe Urban Meyer could be a good hire with the Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence because of one thing, and that's the fact that the Jaguars are going to be a really young team, so they might buy the bullshit for a few years.
But eventually it'll run out.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, 3 or 4 years, they may make the playoffs once or twice, and everything look good, and then everybody gets tired of his crap, and they bring in a guy that can actually coach.
So, Mike, were Urban Meyer's health concerns, were those just reasons to leave Ohio State?
I believe Urban Meyer's health concerns in Florida were because Tim Tebow was graduating, and I believe Urban Meyer's health conditions at Ohio State had to do with all the sexual scandals and everything else that were running rampant, and the assistant coach that he kept on, even though he knew he beat his wife up. So I think Urban Meyer is basically a coward. He's a bullshit artist, and they'll see right through him in the NFL. I think there's no chance that he works out in the NFL. And if he has any success, it'll be with a young team with a bunch of people that'll buy his crap. And then it'll be over within 3 or 4 years because they'll stop buying it. But Urban Meyer is a coward. I mean, come on. The dude had heart issues at Florida. 2 years later, he's the head coach of Ohio State. I don't buy it. And then at Ohio State, he had health issues again. But now he's going to talk to some NFL teams about a job. So the NFL is even more stressful than college football. So the guy is full of crap.
Sam, is Trevor Lawrence, is he a savior for Jacksonville? Is he the real deal?
Oh, yeah, he's the real deal. I think Trevor Lawrence, if we're looking at prospects, quarterback prospects from the last 15 years or so, I'd say Andrew Luck and Joe Burrow are probably the only two QB prospects who I'd take over Trevor Lawrence from the past 10 or 15 years.
Not Josh Allen?
Out of the NFL.
No, Josh Allen wasn't that good coming out of college, I didn't think. Josh Allen has improved a lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Josh Allen,
Mahomes,
the step between last year and this year for Josh Allen has been enormous. Like last year, I thought Josh Allen was a bottom 10 quarterback in the NFL. This year, he's an MVP candidate. So it's flipped around entirely.
Now, the Bears, can they beat the Packers and make the playoffs? Even if they don't beat the Packers, the Cardinals could lose to the Rams and the Bears could still get in. So there looks like a good shot the Bears are going to get in. With that being said, Matt Nagy and Mitch Trubisky, did they keep their jobs, Sam?
You know, it's tough. I would be willing to give Matt Nagy another shot, even though I know Matt Nagy's no longer calling the plays. They switched around to giving the offensive coordinator more power, so he's calling the plays down. I just think you have to let him go. I think you have to let at least Trubisky go because he has looked good for the past 4 or 5 games, but you know who he is at this point. You've had him in the building for 4 years. You benched him for Nick Foles earlier this year. You wouldn't have done that if you thought this guy was capable of leading your team for a full 16-game season. So I think at the very least, Trubisky has to be gone. And so does the general manager, Ryan Pace.
Steve?
I for some stupid reason, I've become somewhat of a Mitch Trubisky fan. I don't know why. I really don't know why. I just like the way he plays the position. Kind of reminds me of Bobby Douglas, the old Mike. You remember Bobby Douglas?
Yeah, the guy that never had a winning record.
No, never had a winning record and broke people's hands when he threw the ball. I think the thing in my humble view of everything is that every time Trubisky, he'll have 4 or 5 good games. This is what I think I've seen him with his career. And Mike, please correct me and rip me all you want because this is my observation. And then he screws up a game, and then they automatically bench him. It's like you got to let this guy learn to play the position and either stick with him or get rid of him.
Well, they gave him a bunch of games at the start of the year. Even though they won, they benched him, I believe, didn't they, Sam?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He was 3 or 4-0. I mean, the Colts were the first team to beat the Bears. They went up to Chicago and beat the Bears.
Yeah,
and
he was 2-0.
He was the quarterback, and then Colts kind of rip into him. And the next thing you know, Foles, I think Trubisky even survived the Colts loss. But shortly after that, you're looking at Foles, and to me, Foles is just a disruptor. Wherever he goes, Foles is good enough to play, but also bad enough that he goes in, they think he's a savior, and he's not a savior.
Well, he was in Philadelphia because he won a Super Bowl.
Yeah, he held it together in Philadelphia and took that team to a Super Bowl. But that was probably really Wentz's team as much as anything. Wentz had that team cranking, and Foles steps in and doesn't screw it up. And that's a great thing. That's definitely a great thing. But I hope they don't. I hope they give Nagy and Trubisky another shot. They're making positive strides. right now. I mean, they were coming out. They looked hot. They'd won, 3 or 4 games in a row before the Colts beat them. And then they got kind of mediocre. And now they're kind of getting a little hot again. They're starting to look a little bit more cohesive and win. And I'd like to see them, but, it's a fickle sport.
All right, let's go ahead and let's move on to the NFC.
You're not going to rip me, Mike?
Well, you have every right to your opinion, Steve.
Wow, that's the first time I've ever heard you say that.
The only thing I would
I'm going to write that down.
The only thing
I'm writing that down.
The only thing I would rip you on is I don't know who Mitch Trubisky is.
The right to your. How do you spell your?
I don't know, but I can tell you this: Mitch Trubisky is Mitch Trubisky.
I know.
And it's spelled Trubisky. All right, next up, the Panthers beat the Redskins. Haskins gets benched. Andy Dalton slices up the Eagles. So what this comes down to is the Redskins will play against the Eagles. And if the Redskins win, they win the division. If the Redskins lose to the Eagles, the winner of the Dallas Cowboy New York Football Giants game will win the NFC East. Steve, who wins the NFC East?
Who called this game last week? Who said the Cowboys would come and win? Both of you were like, oh, no, Philadelphia's going to the Super Bowl.
Hey, Sam, you remember when some dumbass was on the show and he said the Chicago Bears quarterback's last name was Trubisky like 10 times? Go ahead, Sam.
Steve. Steve did call it Dallas game. That was one of the 3 games Steve picked different than us that he got right. He get to call it Dallas game.
Yeah. I think the Cowboys make the playoffs. This is a perfect scenario for them.
Well, I think the big question is, Sam, who's the starting quarterback for Washington next week? Is it Heineke or is it Alex Smith?
All right, so they've said that Alex Smith was progressing last week. They don't know if he's going to be available or not. Taylor Heineke has been named. Well, he's going to be like the interim starter until Alex Smith gets better. But we do not know and probably won't know until game time if Alex Smith can go.
So, Sam, what do you think? Did the Redskins pull this off, or is it going to come down to a Cowboy-Giant matchup to win the division?
I really want Washington to get in versus Dallas because I just hate Dallas so much more. But I think it's probably going to be Dallas. I have to be honest with you. Dallas is just they have a hot hand. They really do, and they're playing a New York team that has been crumbling since Daniel Jones got hurt. I don't know if Daniel Jones is fully healthy yet. They don't have much of an offense in New York.
Does any team in this division ever really have a hot hand? Because the only time they get on winning streaks is when they play their own division 2 or 3 games in a row. I mean,
yeah, that's all I need to do here. These last divisional games are the week.
Yeah, they beat the 49ers and the Eagles. I'm not sure that's a hot hand, Steve.
Yeah, I don't think any team's really got a hot. I think Dallas is the hottest team in the NFC East right now. But I want to go on record as just saying, Mike, I think the reason this is happening to Dallas is Andy Dalton. I think this is a kid who labored in a crap environment. You said so yourself.
I know. Those 5 straight playoff appearances, he never had a chance.
No, getting to the playoffs, I mean, we'll say the Colts are going to make the playoffs. They have no chance. So that's immaterial. Making the playoffs and having a chance are 2 completely separate worlds.
Well, you got a chance.
There are only about 3 teams in either division, NFC or AFC, that have a chance.
I think that is completely incorrect. I think there's 5 or 6 in the NFC.
Well, let me get back to Andy Dalton.
In the AFC, I think there's 2.
I think Andy Dalton, they've given him the time to settle down now, and he's efficiently running that offense. There's not nearly as much flair and flamboyancy to the Cowboys offense right now. It's a good mix of passing and rushing and getting the ball in the hands of the right guys, let them do their work. I've seen the defense even elevate a little bit. The whole spirit of that football team has come up to a degree. I haven't heard anything from Jones. He's been quiet. But I think Andy Dalton, and I'll tell you what, if the Cowboys don't want him, I would love to see him be starting quarterback for the Colts next year, because I think that would elevate the Colts to another level.
I wouldn't like to see that.
No, you wouldn't.
Because I like Andy Dalton. I'd hate to see him have to move to Indiana. I live in Indiana, so, I'm just saying.
Yeah, you can make that.
What's wrong with Indiana?
There is. There really is. And you left, so I don't even want to hear it. You left for another country even, so I definitely don't want to hear it from you. All right. I don't know. I'm going to wait until later in the week. If the Redskins have Alex Smith, I think the Redskins with that defense can beat the Eagles and make this a moot point. If they don't, Cowboys, Giants, you would have to favor the Cowboys right now because Daniel Jones was better yesterday, but he was still Daniel Jones yesterday. And the New York Giants just don't have any defense. Offensively, Lamar Jackson wasn't spectacular, but he doesn't have to be because he was playing Daniel Jones and the Giants. What was spectacular, Sam, was the 85 rushing yards by Gus Edwards, 80 by Lamar, 77 by J.K. Dobbins. They dominated the Giants on the line of scrimmage, and the Ravens get the win. I don't think this really tells us anything about the Ravens or the Giants that we didn't already know. The Ravens can run the ball, and the Giants can't really do much of anything.
Yeah, the Giants do have a decent defensive line, though, with guys like Dexter Lawrence and Leonard Williams up there. So I was semi-impressed to see that the Ravens were able to run the way they were against New York's defensive front. I thought they would have to throw more, but they didn't have to, obviously. Baltimore is in an interesting situation now. I think they're in for the playoffs because the Colts are out, and they play the Bengals in the final week. I still think the Ravens are the kind of team that's going to get bounced in the first round unless they play Pittsburgh. If they play Pittsburgh, they can win. But otherwise, I think Ravens will play out in the first round.
How about this? Can they beat the Bengals? I mean, Brandon Allen looked really good the other day.
Yeah, I was almost going to bring that up. I'm like, no way am I actually going to put before the hypothetical that the Bengals can win. But
they can. I mean, Brandon Allen, the Bengals defense is terrible, but they did shut down Lamar Jackson the last time they played him, even though I think it was 20-0, 27-0. A lot of that was done by the Ravens defense because I think Lamar was held to like 0 rushing yards, and he only threw for like 150 at most. So when you look at that, Brandon Allen, I think there's a case to be made. If Brandon Allen would have been healthy on that Monday night, your Steelers would have got smoked by 3 or 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, I think I'm looking back to the game now. Lamar Jackson had 180 passing yards.
Big difference between Ryan Finley and Lamar and Brandon Allen.
Well, yeah, you can definitely see that. And like you said, you like Ryan Finley, but he doesn't look very prepared half the time.
No, I just like Ryan Finley. All right, he's a nice guy. That's it. I never once said he could play quarterback. Brandon Allen can play quarterback in the NFL. Brandon Allen could start for probably 10 teams in the NFL right now.
Which tells you a lot about 10 teams in the NFL. It tells you a lot about the state of the quarterback situation in the league.
Well, no, I really think Brandon Allen's pretty good from what I saw. And you got to remember this. Last year when Brandon Allen was thrown in, he was the quarterback for the Denver Broncos. You don't have a chance. That's kind of like, go ahead. I was going to say something that would probably be taken out of context by Grizzly candy ass.
Yeah, but no, I'll be interested to see if Brandon Allen keeps the hot streak. You're right. There will be a little bit of competition here. I still think that Baltimore is going to win this game. I would still think 90% of the time they would play this game, Baltimore will win.
Oh, I'm going to too. But what I'm saying is we've seen so much weird crap over the last couple weeks.
That's true. The Jets have won 2 games in a row.
What's going on? The Chargers beat the Broncos by 3. That's all that needs to be said there. And then America's team, the Cincinnati Bengals, make it 2 in a row. Steve Risley called it. That's enough about that. Let's get to the game I really want to talk about, which is the Miami Dolphins and the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, if any game would ever make me think NFL games were fixed, and especially the point spread and the point shaving was done, it was this game, Sam, because what John Gruden did in this game was terrifying. When they have the ball and they're driving to score at the end of the first half and they run the ball, use the timeout, then throw a pass out of bounds and kick a field goal, there's something up with that. He had a timeout left. He throw the ball in the middle of the field, you get a chance to score a touchdown. At the end of the game, down by what, a point or 2 points? He took a freaking knee with a minute left. It was almost like John Gruden was attempting to lose this game. I think the Miami Dolphins with FitzMagic or Tua, either one, are a great story for the NFL. I think this game was fixed.
Well, I don't buy into that stuff, so I'm not going to entertain that. But
so you buy into the fact that John Gruden, who's won a Super Bowl, is going to take a knee with over a minute left and kick a field goal to be up by a point or 2 and give the ball back to a team that only needs a field goal to win, where if they run the ball in, the game's over.
Mike, you've talked about John Gruden on this program before.
Yeah.
Don't act shocked.
I will act shocked because that is absolutely stupid. I always thought John Gruden was an average coach. I didn't think he was worth $100 million, but he's better than probably half the coaches in the NFL. I'm not saying the game was fixed, but I'm saying there were points shaved. There's no other reason to take a knee with over a minute left in the game.
Unless you're just bad at your job.
Dude, even if you're bad at your job, if he's that bad, he wouldn't have won a Super Bowl at one point.
Did you see the players on that Super Bowl team, though? They had a pretty good team.
Yeah, but he also had a Raiders team with Rich Gannon who'd never done anything, all of a sudden made the playoffs a couple years in a row and went to a Super Bowl after he left, went to the championship game before that. I don't think it's beyond comprehension here that some shady shit goes on because there's a few games every week that doesn't make any sense.
Well, I mean, like you said earlier, you're entitled to your own opinion here. I just think it was a blown game by the Raiders.
But I didn't want to talk to you, Sam. Go ahead, Steve. What do you think? Am I right here?
I think that it's far-fetched to believe that Gruden would shave points and throw in this day and age of investigations the ability to find out. And basically that would Pete Rose John Gruden. He would just be bumped out of the sport.
No, because the NFL is behind this. The NFL is controlled by gambling money. It always has been. If you look, every team from the Maras.
Here we go, Sam. Here comes all these conspiracy theories.
Yeah, a conspiracy theory is only.
Here we go.
A conspiracy theory is only a conspiracy theory if there's no justification.
I think this, Mike. Before you get into your conspiracy, let me get this out.
Because you already interrupted me, so you can go ahead. And
you interrupted me. You asked me a question. I was giving you my answer.
I didn't interrupt.
You interrupted
Sam
me.
was talking. I interrupted.
No,
Sam.
you said, Steve, what's your thoughts?
Yeah,
I was giving you my thoughts.
Stupid. So
I think this.
Else.
I think John Gruden is a pompous asshole football coach, and I think he got a little over pompous in the game yesterday. And he thought the bullshit calls he was making would somehow work and make him look like a genius. What his mind thought was, I can't go beyond that because I don't want to believe, I do not believe that John Gruden would throw football games.
Oh, yeah.
Although it is Las Vegas.
You did say he's a pompous ass. It is.
Yeah, that doesn't make him a cheater and a hardcore gambler.
How about
I think
the original teams from the Hallis family to the Maras, what do they all have in common? They were all connected to the mob.
Okay, well,
every one of them.
And so is
funny.
I'm not going to get you. I'm not stepping into your fantasy world. Your conspiracy world today.
No, what the fantasy worlds have your head
conspiracy world
ass that you don't think $1 billion corporation? I mean, you work for freaking Pfizer, dude. You know how this shit works.
We were a multi-billion-dollar corporation.
Yeah, because you kill people.
And we save lives.
No, you don't.
All right. Now, here's another one. I think that John Gruden got pompous. And I think he thought he was going to try and outsmart some other coaches. And it backfired on him, and he looked pretty stupid. Which, if you're going to be pompous and it doesn't work, you're going to look pretty stupid.
Yeah, every freaking show. The 49ers shocked the Cardinals. Steve, will the Cardinals make the playoffs?
Will the Cardinals make the playoffs? No.
Sam?
Not based on Kyler Murray. I don't believe Kyler Murray's ready to lead him there.
He never will be either, by the way. Sam?
It basically comes down to Chicago versus Green Bay or Arizona versus, I think they're playing the Rams this week. I'd rather take Chicago in that bet, honestly, right now.
How about this? I believe it's very possible Chicago and Arizona both lose and Chicago gets in.
That also could happen.
Yeah, so I don't think Arizona gets in. I think your little Kyler Murray love fest, Sam, should be over by now.
I agree with that, Mike.
Thank you, Steve.
Like I've had him in the top 5 at any point. I think I have him in top 5
after week 1. That's why Steve's my best friend, because he agrees with me.
And I don't think that Oswald was the only shooter on Kennedy either.
He never was a shooter. All right, next up, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Oh, wait a minute. Well, are the Rams in the playoffs yet? I don't even.
No.
So they have to win to get in.
If the Rams lose,
do the Rams control their own destiny?
No. Well, yeah. If they win,
so if they win, they're in.
But if they lose, they're not. And as bad as Jared Goff is, every once in a while he's good. So if you get one of those days where every once in a while he's good, they're going to make the playoffs. If they're not,
I think he's due for a good game.
So how about this? If the Cardinals and Bears both win, that means the Rams are out. Correct, Sam?
Yeah, correct. I believe that's so.
All right. I don't. And
I
this
don't think the Bears win in Green Bay, and I don't think the Cardinals win against the Rams. I think Goff has a good week.
Well, I think this. I think the Rams could win it. I think the bigger question is Green Bay and Chicago because number one, it's a divisional matchup, which means it's probably going to be a close game.
Where's the game at?
It doesn't matter. It's cold as hell at either place.
Yeah.
And there's no crowd hardly at all at either place.
You're right. Touche.
So when I look at it, I mean, you would have to favor, Aaron Rodgers over Mitch Trubisky, but
Mike, it's Trubisky.
It's Trubisky.
Trubisky. There's no N in there.
Man, I'll tell you what, for Christmas, I thought about getting you hooked on phonics. But I didn't know if there was that many pictures in it. All right, Tampa Bay dominates Detroit. Is Tampa Bay a Super Bowl contender?
Hey, here's the question for you, Mike.
I already asked you a question.
You're on phonics. Can you name the two countries that that touch both the Pacific and Atlantic Ocean that only have A as the vowel in their name of their country?
I don't even know what question you just asked me. It took you so damn long to get it out.
Sam,
I thought only football
Panama
players.
and something or other.
Panama's one of them.
Canada.
Exactly. See,
Yeah.
Okay.
Mike couldn't even understand the question, let alone come up with the answer.
No, because see, I put
Having a college education is a wonderful thing, isn't it, Sam?
Not really. It does you no good. You know what? When the shit hits the fan, we'll see how good that diploma stops a bullet. Next up, the Bucks dominate the Lions. Steve, are the Bucks a Super Bowl contender?
Yes, I believe with Tom Brady back there, and I'm going to reuse my phrase. The Bucks keep spooling up. They're just spooling up. They're winding up. They're getting better and better and better. I think each week, more cohesive, and I think they're a threat. I think they're not quite as good as Green Bay or New Orleans right now, but I think it's not a team I'd want to play with Tom Brady sitting in that pocket, playing the way Tom Brady's got, 44 touchdown passes?
Something like that.
Yeah, he had 40, and then he threw 4 in the first half. Jesus Christ, a full game of Tom Brady right now, you're in trouble.
Well, Sam, agree or disagree?
No, I agree. I think Tampa Bay obviously still has flaws. The offensive line's still questionable. They still have trouble running the ball. Even yesterday when they beat the Lions,
Yeah, but all these
still
teams have issues. All of these teams have issues.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm saying. Especially in the NFC. I mean, there's so much issues at the top of that conference that really the issues in Tampa Bay, are they really that different than some of the issues that all the other teams have? So I'm not that upset. I'm not that worried for Tampa Bay. I think they are a playoff contender. And Brady, to use Steve's term, they are spooling up. He's getting a lot better here towards the end of the season. I think Mike Evans had like 180-something receiving yards yesterday. I like the Buccaneers, like what they're doing. They're gonna make probably the conference championship game. I feel pretty confident in that at this point.
And the Super Bowl is played in their stadium should they get there.
Very good, Steve. That was
Super Bowl at Tampa Bay.
All right. And the other thing is this: no quarterback's ever won more playoff games than Tom Brady. And I think it's safe to play. He's probably won more road playoff games than anybody also.
I agree. And I think go ahead, Sam.
I was going to say, he's the greatest quarterback of all time for a reason. Yeah. They got plenty of weapons around him. It looks like maybe things are finally clicking in that offense. And if they are, you better pray for the rest of the other teams in the NFC.
I think what's great about Tom Brady, Mike, is that he's played his way into the MVP discussion. Mid-year, we wouldn't be counting him as an MVP. Beginning of the season, we wouldn't. They wasted a lot of money on this guy, and I think right now he's playing like a couple of good breaks, and he could lead the Bucs right to the Super Bowl.
Imagine if this guy goes and wins a Super Bowl MVP and he's 7th Super Bowl at the age of 43, and then decides to come back and do it again next year.
He would become one of the GOATs athletes of all time. I
think he's already become one.
I agree with you, but he would solidify that tremendously.
I mean, in our lifetime, Steve, what do we got? Muhammad Ali, Michael Jordan, and Tom Brady.
Brady. And that's the 3 names I was just going to throw out with you. God, we're thinking alike.
Yeah, that's because we're old. We probably forgot most of the other people we knew of.
Let's do a show right after this and talk conspiracy theories, because I think you're right on most of them.
I am.
But no,
I guarantee you
think
there's fixed games. The NBA, you had that Tim Donaghy, the NFL official, who admitted to rigging games. So I don't think that there's a lot of money.
I just think for Gruden to do it. But anyway, we're off of that right now. That's a different thing. But I think what Brady has done. I'll tell you what. I obviously being a Colts fan, never being a big New England fan. What Brady has done this year just solidifies his greatness. To go out and do this on his own, and to see him just improve and improve and improve and improve.
See, I think he damn near solidified it last year with the season he had, the 24 touchdowns and the 8 picks on a bad New England team. And I don't think there's any doubt if he would have stayed in New England, the Patriots would be in the playoffs right now. No doubt. Because that's what the Patriots miss right now as a quarterback.
Right.
They won what? They won 6 games with the Cam Newton, so I would assume they probably would have won 10 at least with Tom Brady.
Yeah.
Which right now 10 wins may not get you in to the playoffs in the AFC.
But it's Tom Brady, so he's winning at 11th, and your Colts would have been eliminated.
You could be looking at the Colts at 11-5, eliminated. That's the only team that could happen to now. But if the Colts could actually go 11-5. If all 3 other teams win, they're out, and they're out of 11-5. I think they said that's like the first time that's ever happened that 11-5 team did not make the playoffs. It's not.
Actually, the New England Patriots in 2008, Sam.
Okay.
They went I know what you're talking about.
That was the year Brady got hurt. Matt Castle took over, and they still went 11-5, but they missed the playoffs.
Yeah, pulling up right now.
I'm just
listening. They were 11-5, 2008. You're right.
I'm just reciting what the idiot announcers on the games. Actually, that game had the big announcers. It had Romo and Masters boy. Who's CBS's big announcer? Nance.
Buck or something?
Nance.
I thought it was Buck.
No, that's Fox.
Because, see, also, I think in 1985, the Broncos went 11-5 and missed out on a playoff.
Yeah, there were a lot less teams in the playoffs, and that's more.
No,
this year they got an extra. Now this year they got an extra team in the playoffs, and still the Colts could go 11-5 and not make the playoffs with an extra team allowed into the playoffs.
I'm just saying, off the top of my head, the only 2 11-5s I remember didn't make the playoffs were the 85 Broncos and I think the 08 Patriots. It was 08, right, Sam?
So it has happened. Okay. That'll be the most disheartening for if you're a Colts fan is to see your team go 11-5 and then not even get a chance to play in the playoffs, although I don't think it matters because they're going to get dusted in the first game anyway.
Well, the thing is this, though. In the end, it was their own damn fault. Right. They had it right there, and they blew it.
Yeah, I agreed entirely.
But
that's what happens this time of year. Some teams choke. You look at the Bucks. They're a team that's elevating themselves while the Colts are finding ways to lose games. Pittsburgh, you got to give Pittsburgh credit. This was a crunch game for Pittsburgh, and the way they came back in the second half of that football game and took charge of that game, and it looked like the Steelers of a few years ago.
I would say this. After the way they've played, just to have one good half there, if I'm Mike Tomlin, I'm trying to win this next game against Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you can limp into the playoffs because you limp into the playoffs like Pittsburgh. I think they're going to get steamrolled in the first round.
Right.
Unless they get to play the Cleveland Browns in the first round.
Well, in which case, you might get a win. I think they could beat the only teams I could see Pittsburgh beating in the first round are maybe Baltimore and maybe Cleveland. Those are the only ones. If Indy gets there, I could see Indy as well. But those are probably the only 3 teams I could see them beating.
Yeah, because I couldn't see them beat Miami with the pass defense. They'd have to run the ball, and I think they'd get beat.
Yeah, that's why I'm concerned.
But I agree with you, Mike. I think Pittsburgh comes into this hell-bent to beat the Browns. They need to shift momentum, not rely on beating the Colts in the second half of a football game. That's a good start, but for Pittsburgh to have any confidence.
All right, look out for this. In a close game, the NFL wants the Cleveland Browns in the playoffs. That's a good story.
Yeah.
So watch the play. Watch the penalties, Sam.
All right, Mike. All right.
I know. I'm wrong. It's crazy, but go watch Super Bowl 40 as a Steeler fan, and you'll see what a fixed game looks like. You've seen that game, right, Sam?
Yeah, I've seen that game.
That game's highly questionable, isn't it, Sam?
I'm not watching the referees most of the time, Mike.
Sam, You watch the play calls, though, and you watch what the referees called. That game was highly questionable. Even every Pittsburgh Steeler fan I know thinks that game is highly questionable.
Hey, Mike, sometimes things just happen, and they're good for you. Sometimes you just don't question them.
Yeah, it just seems to always happen for Pittsburgh and Dallas. Yeah.
Well, they make things happen. Those franchises know how to make things happen.
They didn't make Calvin Johnson.
I don't think that there's rampant cheating in the NFL.
Well, you're a dumbass then, because there is.
I think that's
in every league.
That's what God created championship wrestling for, was fake sports.
Yeah, and it's the same. If you look on the ticket, it's the same on an NFL ticket as it is for the WWE. It says that this is for entertainment purposes only. It doesn't say anything about a sporting contest that you have to be happy with.
That's for broadcast purposes.
No, it's actually for buying a ticket and going into the game. It's not,
and it's also for entertainment purposes, not for gambling. They're saying the league is not set up for gambling.
Weird that the league is set up for gambling now.
Gambling takes advantage of the NFL, but I don't think that the NFL is set up, and I don't think they have meetings about how can we parlay this into gambling. No, I don't think it happens.
You don't? Even though they signed a big contract with all the casinos? You don't think they had a meeting before they had the meeting with the casinos? There's billions of dollars in there.
Yeah.
Billions of dollars.
I don't know the inner workings of that contract, but I don't think it was, we will cheat and fix games for you. Let us know what you want the odds to be.
The NFL has been doing that for years with or without them.
And we'll talk to there's too many
Sam's gotta go. He keeps looking at the clock, but you just keep talking.
I got 5% battery left, so I was just wondering if I was going to be able to turn my laptop off or it was going to shut off on me.
Well, do you want to just talk till it shuts off on him, Steve? And then we'll act like we hung up on him and laugh at him. Yeah. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up right now. Make sure you check us out at rockfin.com, The Grueling Truth. You can sign up for free to get all the free content there, $9.99 a month to pay for content that is exclusive to Rockfin only. There's thousands of different providers on there, content creators. Make sure you check that out. You can follow Steve Risley at srisley34. You can follow Sam Teets at Sam Teets
33.
I always get him mixed up with Cole Hanna because he was number 5. But all right, guys, we're gonna wrap.
Wait. What, Mike?
Steve,
I got one more thing.
Oh God, what?
Who's our sponsor?
Manscaped.
Let's.
It looks like you'd have brought it up instead of just asking.
Who's got the best Manscaped joke of the day?
I don't know. You probably do, or you wouldn't ask.
No, I don't really.
No.
I haven't gotten my Manscaped yet. You guys have Manscapes. I don't have one.
Well, that's because they said they wanted to send it to the popular people.
Okay. All right.
Hey, don't hold it against me. I don't have nothing to do with it. I have shaved my balls clean. No. How about you, Sam?
That's TMI.
What, Sam?
What did you say?
I said
you don't want to hear it again.
I've shaved my balls clean. How about you, Sam? I know Sam has, unless he lied on the air.
Oh, I would never do that. Now, would I, Mike?
I would hope not, unless you want to be a politician.
No, I definitely don't want to be that.
Okay, so shave your balls, Steve. All right, guys, remember manscaped.com, TGT20 for 20% off and free shipping on your first purchase. Me and Sam will be back tomorrow at 1 o'clock to talk about what, Sam?
I can email you my quarterback power rankings.
Okay, so we'll do the quarterback power rankings. Quarterback power rankings. We're going to call it Risley's rankings tomorrow. Steve,
I got to clean up dog poop tomorrow, so don't bother.
Nobody was going to ask you because
I'm doing something productive.
Mitch Trubinsky ranked number 5. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up. So for Steve Risley, Sam Teets, I'm Mike Goodpasser. You've been listening and watching The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.